Alright, what's up, Dragon Brood? Strap yourselves in because there are a lot of cards that got previewed today for Duskmourn. We have a lot to talk about. Alright, like always, I haven't looked at these until right now with you. I just scrolled down to see how many there were. And we're going to try to go kind of quick because there's a lot of cards, and I don't want this to be a super long video for you. So, getting into the first one, we have Leyline of Transformation. It's a 4 mana, so 2 blue for an enchantment. If it's in your opening hand, like all the previous Leylines, you get to play it for free. And then as it enters, you choose a creature type. Creatures you control are the chosen type in addition to all their other types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. This is interesting, right? I don't know how many like creature type based decks in blue that we have. I mean, this could be a thing that randomly could help maybe birds. I don't know. Could work with frogs, but I don't think you need it. Trying to think of other like blue creature types where you want to play this in standard. Not very many though, to be honest, but there's probably something. Usually cards like this lend themselves to being some type of combo piece, so you can search for like a previous card, I think from yesterday, where you can search for a demon, you know, stuff like that, but we'll see. Fear of Imposters. Colorless blue for a 3/2 enchantment creature nightmare. It does have flash. When it enters, counter target spell, its controller manifests dread. So this is a 3 mana counter, and your opponent gets the better of their top 2 cards as a 2/2. This is pretty strong. I'm not gonna lie. This is a real good card. Like, because most counters already cost 3 anyway, that just stop anything. This does that with a small downside, but you do get a 3/2 creature that I guess technically can block a 2/2. This is kind of interesting, especially considering it's also an enchantment creature. That could be what pushes it over if there's enough things that care about Eerie in this set. But I almost wish it wasn't an enchantment creature, and it would still be pretty good. Being an enchantment creature, I think, gives it an extra leg up. Pretty strong for an uncommon. Patchwork Beastie. 1 green, beast, 3/3. Oh, so this has to have a big downside, right? It can't attack or block unless there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can mill a card. Alright, so it has to have Delirium before it does anything, otherwise it's just a 3/3. Not great. Not great. Unless you just have something that needs a cheap creature to sacrifice to a thing or whatever. But generally, not something you want to play. I will point out, though, that it is an artifact creature, which could matter. Alright, we also have a series of lands as it looks. So, Hushwood Verge, I guess there's one of these for every color. Tap add a green, or tap add a white, but only if you control a forest or a plains. So this is kind of cool that if you're playing a 2 or 3 color deck and like your core color happens to be green with this particular land, you can just play it and it's always going to tap for green. And then occasionally when you have something else in play, it will tap for a white as well. So kind of an interesting card here. Does it replace other lands? I don't know yet, but it will in some builds. I just don't know which ones particular yet, but kind of an interesting set of lands. Especially when you consider the fact that we have the Surveil lands that count as 2 creature types, in addition to being able to fetch for stuff with the one land lets you go search for a basic, right? Fabled Passage. So that's pretty interesting. Like, you have some options to make these work. And actually, quick glance, it looks like we might only have those lands for 5 colors right now, so the others might come out in a future set. Who knows? But here we have Grievous Wounds, 3 colorless, black for an enchantment aura. You enchant a player, and that player can't gain life. Whenever an enchanted player is dealt damage, they lose half their life rounded up. What the hell is this card? Okay, it does cost 5, so there is that. And they can still remove it, but man, losing half your life rounded up every time you lose life? Oof. It's not even, it's when they dealt damage, not when they lose life. So that makes a little bit of a difference. But yeah, I think this is one of those cards that, at least for standard play, is going to be a little bit of a trap card for people. It's kind of like that other, what's the enchantment that like, it costs like 5, but then every time your opponent plays a spell, they have to discard a card or lose 5 life. Like, that doesn't get played that much, and it has a pretty direct effect with discard decks right now. So this probably doesn't get played a bunch, but somebody will find a way to combo somebody out and have a fun deck with it. Drag to the Roots, 2 colorless, black-green, instant. This spell costs 2 less to cast, as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. Destroy target non-land permanent. This is just solid. You know, nothing crazy. If you already are willing to play the The green instant that you can play a black and a colorless for kicker and get rid of anything, this kind of falls in that same spot. If you're already playing stuff that puts things into the graveyard, this is obviously a good card for that because it's just a 2 mana remove anything. So like, it's a fair but solid card. Inquisitive Glimmer. This is our first multicolor Glimmer, I think, that we've seen this set. A white and a blue for a 2/3 enchantment creature, Fox Glimmer. Enchantment spells you control cost 1 less to cast. Unlock costs you 1 less. So, yeah, this is just good. It's a 2 mana 2/3. It itself is an enchantment. It makes all your other enchantments cheaper. If you're doing the room deck thing, it makes those costs cheaper. Yeah, nothing to complain about on this card. It's actually a pretty solid uncommon. Pyroclasm. We're going old school. Colorless and a red sorcery. Deal 2 damage to each creature. Obviously, with the token decks, whatever, like this is going to see some action. Just a solid card. That's really all there is to this. Pyroclasm got played before, was solid. We're in a world now where this is still solid. Sure, why not? Valgavoth's Faithful. I think this is the 3rd or 4th card we've gotten in the core set, or the main set, that references Valgavoth. But this is 1 black, 1/1, human cleric. You can pay 4, sacrifice it, return target creature card from the graveyard to the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. This I like. Most of the reanimator spells we get cost 4 or 5 in some various capacity, bring something back, put a counter on it, whatever. But they're kind of bad if you don't already have the target you're looking for in the graveyard and don't do anything in early stages of the game. In this case, you can have a 1/1 that if your opponent doesn't get rid of it, now you have redundancy of having an actual creature, even if it's just to block and buy you time sometimes, and then be able to use it for an actual reanimator spell. So this is kind of cool. It's basically a 5-cost reanimator spell if you top deck it, because it doesn't have a tap effects or tap ability, so you can actually just pay the 4 and sacrifice it, which is cool. So like, yeah, this is basically a 5-mana reanimator spell that early in the game can be a 1/1 creature. Nothing wrong with that. Shard Mage's Rescue. 1 white for an enchantment aura. Enchant. It has flash. Enchant creature you control. As long as Shard Mage's Rescue entered this turn, enchanted creature has hexproof. Creature gets 1/1. Not terribly exciting. It does give something hexproof, but I would think unless you're playing something that cares about enchantments, or maybe if you're playing the like Boros aggro type deck that has a lot of prowess, this could work in there and then gives you a permanent +1/+1 while protecting your creatures. Kind of how the green cards work in the red-green versions, giving their stuff hexproof. So maybe this has a home there, but I'm not sure where else right now. Well, I couldn't get you all a great shot of this, but this is Overlord of the Flood Pits. 3 colorless blue for a 5/3. It has impending of 3, so very small impending cost. It has flying, and when it enters or attacks, you draw 2 and discard 1. This is probably the second. The green one's pretty good, but this one's actually really strong too. I mean, just being able to play it early, draw 2, discard 1 for 3 mana is pretty solid. And then after that, every time it attacks, you have a 5/3. It does have only 3 toughness, which I think, if my memory serves, makes this the smallest toughness of them. But solid overall. We have Swarm, the Swarm Weaver, 2 colorless, black-green for a 2/3 legendary artifact creature, Scarecrow. Makes sense Scarecrows would be back in the set. Whenever this enters, create 2 1/1 black and green insect creature tokens with flying. As long as there are 4 or more card types among creatures or cards in your graveyard, insects and spiders you control get +1/+1 and have death touch. So yeah, this is interesting. If you did want to do an insect or spider deck, this is a card you obviously would want. It is a pretty small creature though for 4 mana. It's a 2/3. However, you're technically getting a 2/3 and 2 1/1s, which makes it better. And those tokens do fly, so you can chump block a lot of things, which matters. Very interesting card. How good it is, I don't know yet, but I could even see a world where you're playing something, getting this back out of the graveyard every turn, like you have something to sacrifice it to, and you're just accumulating the tokens for something. So this will probably find a home somewhere with some quirkiness going on. Ghost Vacuum, 1 colorless artifact. Tap to exile a card from a graveyard. Okay, that's going to be pretty good in this set. Pay 6 and tap it, sacrifice the vacuum, put each creature card exiled with Ghost Vacuum onto the battlefield under your control with a flying counter on it. Each of them is a 1/1 spirit in addition to their other types. Activate only as a sorcery. All right, I kind of like the flavor of what's going on here, right? You're removing stuff from the graveyard, you're collecting the spirits, and then you blow it up and it cracks and the spirits come out, and you just have all those creatures on your side. Yeah, this is just a solid card. Even if you never crack it for 6 and you're never even removing creature spells, like just for delirium cost or reanimator things or whatever, just removing stuff out of the graveyard for 1 mana is actually super nice. Ethereal Armor. I believe we've had this before as a Magic card already, but it's 1 white. It's enchantment order. You enchant a creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control and has first strike. There we go. I can say a sentence. So yeah, for 1 mana, if you're playing the enchantment deck, obviously you put this on a creature. It's now bigger for the number of enchantments you control. And on top of that, it has first strike, so you're not going to die to death touch stuff. Yeah, this is just quality. Not much to say about this one. Nico, Light of Hope, no longer a planeswalker. 2 colorless, blue-white, human wizard, 3/4 legend. When it enters, create 2 shard tokens. So we're still doing the shard thing here. Shards are pay 2, you sacrifice it, you scry 1, then draw a card. You can pay 2 and tap it, exile target non-legendary creature you control. Shards you control become copies of it until the beginning of the next end step. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So this is a quirky card, right? So for 4 mana, you get a 3, 4, and 2 shards. You may use them to draw or not. If you don't use them to draw, then you can pay 2, tap Nico, exile a non-legendary creature you control. Your shards will be copies of those until end of turn. And then at the end of the turn, they go back to normal, and you get your creature back. This is wild. It's also, interestingly, this doesn't say played as a sorcery. So you can do this during your opponent's end step, turn your shards into blockers. There's a few things you could do with this. That could be pretty interesting. So I could see this finding a home somewhere. I think right now, though, the issue will be, is there another way to make shards? Then we have Victor, Valgavoth Seneschal, colorless, white, black, 3/3, human warlock. It does have Eerie, so whenever an enchantment you control enters or when you unlock a room, whenever you fully unlock a room, Surveil 2. If this is the first time this ability has resolved this turn, if it's the second time, each opponent discards a card. If it's the third time, put a creature card from your graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. I always feel like these that have like a get a thing, get a thing, get a thing, unless it's something really easy like we have with Omnath, where you can just like get lands into play and sacrifice your lands to go get other lands. A lot of times we just don't get this third trigger. It's very likely possible because there are things that make like enchantment creature tokens and stuff like that, I'm sure. And if that's the case, maybe. But otherwise, I don't know how I feel about this. I'm not super excited about it, to be honest. But I will say, even if it's just Surveil 2, and you only get to trigger this once, it's still not terrible every time an enchantment comes into play, right? Basically, every enchantment just says, as a bonus, Surveil 2. Altenac, the thrice called. So it's like Beetlejuice, you gotta say it 3 times. 5 colorless, black, green, so 7 mana, 9/9. That's good value. It's an insect beast legendary. It has trample, and when it becomes the target of a spell or ability opponent controls, you get to draw a card. Alright, doesn't really protect itself for that mana, but drawing a card's fine. You can pay a colorless and a green. You can discard this card, return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Ah, boy, how do I feel about this card? Like, it's an interesting ramp type card, right? If you're already playing stuff that mills yourself, you know, maybe with the elf that's putting lands, flipping cards in and you're trying to return lands. Maybe you're just playing stuff to trigger your delirium. Like, you can pay 2 and basically ramp up for the turn. I mean, getting a 9/9 for 7 is pretty legit. But is it better than getting a Tyrannix Rex? Is it better than for 5 mana getting a Silverback? Right? Like, I don't know. I think that's where my confusion is going to be on this one. Like, it's neat, but the ramp part almost feels better than the 9/9 you get. But who knows? We'll probably find a home for this somewhere. Speaking of Beetlejuice, say its name, a colorless and a green. Mill 3 cards, then you return a creature or land card from the graveyard to your hand. Exile this card and 2 other cards named say its name from your graveyard. Search your graveyard, hand, or library for a card name out. Oh, well, there you go. It goes with the card we were just talking about. And put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle, activate. Okay. This makes sense. All right, so you can just mill stuff, and if you've already milled the other copies, you can just sacrifice this or exile this, and then you go search for the other thing. This feels at least a little better. I don't know how often you're going to do that because this is a very specific thing, and it doesn't. I don't know. If you're already playing the Delirium stuff, then I guess it kind of makes sense. Yeah, it's a little bit of a quirky card, but I'm here for it because you can just play a full set of Say Its Name, and then just have 1 or 2 copies of Altenac just in case. So yeah, I don't hate this. Man, it feels like the cards are endless today. I don't know if we're making good time or not, but Leyline of Resonance. 2 colorless red enchantment. Same thing. If it's in their hand to start the game, you can play it for free. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only a single target, or only a single creature you control, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Oh, you know, if you thought Mono Red could do some silly things before, this could be hilarious. If they get this into play for free on turn 1, and then they're attacking with like 2 creatures, then they like rage something plus something, like, so that might happen. People might try that. I don't know. It's probably a bad plan. I don't think it's great to play in there, but it does allow for some silly turns. Beyond that, I don't know if this has a really great use. It's interesting though. There's probably some commanders that work with this. Leyline of the Void, another quality reprint. 2 colorless black, same thing. If it starts in your hand, you get it for free. If a card to be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Good sideboard card if you're worried about Delirium. If Delirium stuff or graveyard things become one of the main strategies, you could main deck a couple of these. Yeah, just a good card. I think anybody who's played with this in the past, the other 2 times it's been printed, you'll enjoy this card. Meathook Massacre 2. I was wondering what this was going to be. Also funny that we actually named a card just a sequel. So Meathook Massacre 2. It is XX, black. So a higher cost than Meathook Massacre by double, right? So it's 4 black and X as opposed to 2 black and 1 X. So yeah, anyway, legendary enchantment. When it enters, each player sacrifices X creatures. So let's say you spend 6, everybody has to exile or sacrifice 1 creature. Whenever a creature you control dies, you can pay 3 life. If you do, return that card under your control with a finality counter. So if you sacrifice something you want to keep, you could pay 3 life, your creature comes right back. And then whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you may pay 3 life. Oh wait, no, they may pay 3 life. If they don't, return that card under your control with a finality counter. Oh, okay, so this is kind of ugly. So, all right, let's say we pay, 4 black, 2 and 2. So let's say we pay 8 mana. Everybody has to sacrifice 2 things. You can pay 3 life for each of your 2 things and get them back into play. Your opponent, however, has to pay that 6 life, or you get those 2 things. Now, that being said, if the opponent has small creatures or tokens or whatever, they can just sacrifice those. They're going to go to the graveyard. You wouldn't get those anyway. So this, while quirky and fun, I don't think is nearly as good as Meathook Massacre. However, it does have a different upside that possibly ends the game sooner if you do get any creatures from your opponent. We have Slavering Branch Snapper. 4 colorless, green, 7/6, trample, forest cycling. This is fine if you're already playing Reanimator type stuff or whatever, and you just want to be able to go get lands and kind of keep on pace. But otherwise, probably not going to see a lot of action in Constructed. Random note though, it is a green lizard. Grasping Longneck. This is weird. It's like a big spider with a long neck, but they're calling it a horror. So 2 colorless and a green for a 4/2 with reach. When it dies, you gain 2 life. Quality for Constructed, but I think we want to be doing other things with 3 mana in green, or for limited, I mean. In Constructed, I feel like you can spend 3 mana on Polokranos, on Scrap Shooter, whatever, and just have a better creature with reach. And the 2 life doesn't even matter that much when you get an extra 2 toughness or more. Turn Inside Out. Very gross name. 1 red. It's an instant. Target creature gets +3/+0 till end of turn. When it dies, manifest dread. Wow. You know, red decks are going to like this card. They're already playing other stuff that gives like +2 and maybe gets a thing or whatever. Like, this is pretty cool. This is +3/+0, and you get your choice of the top 2 cards. Could be neat. Could be neat. If nothing else, you know, when rotation happens, this is a card to keep an eye on. Clockwork Percussionist. 1 red for a 1/1 monkey toy artifact creature with haste. When it dies, exile the top card of your library. You may play it until the end of your next turn. Probably won't get a lot of Constructed play. There's some weird builds where maybe you really care about having some artifact creatures or maybe something with haste. and it might fit into those, but otherwise probably won't get looked at too much. Fanatic of the Harrowing, a 3 colorless and a black for a 2/2 human cleric. When it enters, each player discards a card. If you discard a card this way, you get to draw a card. Limited play, quality, constructed, no way. We just have better discard options. Stay hidden, stay silent. Colorless and a blue, enchant creature. When this enters, you tap enchanted creature. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. You can pay 4 blue, shuffle enchanted creature into its owner's library, then manifest dread. Wow. So for 2 mana, you basically lock down a creature permanently, and then later you can pay 6 to shuffle that into your opponent's library, and you get a 2/2 effectively. This is interesting. If I'm playing a deck that already cares about enchantments, I'm pretty sure I'm playing this. Other situations I think would really depend on the deck, but it's an interesting card for sure. Piranha Fly, colorless and a blue, 2/1, flying, it enters tapped. Fish, insect, doesn't really go with any current creature types. It's just a solid little flyer for limited play. That's about it, I guess. Shepherding Spirits, 4 colorless, white for a 4/5 spirit, flying, plane cycling. Yeah, I think kind of the same thing we're talking about the green card. You know, you can plane cycle if you're playing a deck that already wants to fill up the graveyard or similar. It's a 4/5 flyer, which isn't anything to turn your nose up at. Just not an exciting card otherwise. It's mostly the plane cycling that's going to give this the consideration to be played or not. Acrobatic Cheerleader, colorless and a white for a 2/2 human survivor. At the beginning of your second main phase, if this card's tapped, put a flying counter on it. This ability triggers only once. Not particularly exciting as far as survivors go. It is a 2/2 for 2. I feel like there's better things we could still do with our 2 mana. Hoping to connect once, and then if it survives, you get to turn it into a 2/2 flyer. It's just not exciting. And here we have a room at Central Elevator, 3 colorless and a blue. For a room, obviously, whenever you unlock this door, search your library for a room card that doesn't have the same name as a room you control. Reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle. Or you can play Promising Stairs, 2 colorless and a blue. At the beginning of your upkeep, you surveil 1. You win the game if there are 8 or more different names among unlocked doors of rooms you control. Here's one of the payoffs. We knew there had to be one somewhere in the set. This is obviously the room you're looking for to be able to win the game. You can play this early, which is pretty cool, and then just surveil 1 every turn to try to find your other rooms. Or you could just tutor for a room straight up for 4, play this, and then the next turn play 3 or pay 3 plus something else for the missing room you might have, something like that. So yeah, this is just a good card if you're going to be doing the room thing for sure. This is not a room you're probably just going to put into a random deck. Like this particularly is one you want to play if you're playing rooms. However, being able to surveil every turn is pretty good. So this could find some spots in those decks, but we'll see. All right, overall, I don't think we did too bad. We raced through a bunch of cards. Lots of cool stuff today. So today I want to know, how do you feel about rooms? Are you interested in playing a room deck? And what do you think about those new lands? Do they replace anything, or were you looking at playing them? Because I think those are probably the 2 biggest questions from today. But yeah, check that out. I'm going to link some other reviews for Duskmourn in case you missed them. But otherwise, that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.